What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Running Up Podcast. I'm your host, Najee Adams, and you know I got the guys with me today. It's a triple entendre we got right here. This is never really the case anymore, but we got all three of us, baby. Justice, Gregory, Khalil Baker. How y'all doing today?
Swillingly living the dream.
Beautiful.
Doing
Khalil?
great. Doing great.
Yeah.
Feeling good.
There we go. Bucket hat season. You guys are kind of matching a little bit. Gray sweat thingy with the tannish hat. You feel me? I didn't get the memo, but we moving. We're actually recording at daytime for once. This never happens. You can't really tell, but it's light outside. And yeah, today we're basically just gonna talk about we have never really done NFL draft content, so this is new for us.
So
We're
excited.
giving I know we're giving our top 10 wide receivers in the draft. We were gonna do a consensus rank, and we might do it after, but like for the basis of the pod, we're just gonna kind of rattle off our top 10, talk through them, pros, cons, why we like them, why we don't. And yeah, so before we get into everything, make sure you guys subscribe to Run It Up Podcast. Pretty much everywhere podcasts are found. Follow us on Twitter at Run It Up Pod. You can find me on Twitter at Najianis_, Justice on Twitter at JReed_,
Sir.
and Khalil on below at below 44. It'll all be in the description, so don't worry about it. Leave a 5-star rating review. Subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on basically everything else. So yeah, without further ado, we got to get into the song of the week. A lot of new music. This has been a great little time for hip hop on Twitter and everywhere. So I'm excited to see what you guys say. Uh, if I had more time, I would love to talk through the whole J. Cole thing with you
We'll
boys.
get into it one day.
But
It's
but
crazy. That's crazy.
I'd love to talk through it with y'all. But Justice,
That's
start
so
me off. Song
funny.
of the week, brother.
Song of the week, the biggest surprise feature that we could have possibly gotten. Red Leather is an
Oh,
absolute banger.
it is.
Cole slid. Future was unreal. And it took me back to the days when I actually used to actually listen to Future like religiously. So it was a nice little throwback for me.
Beautiful. That's probably one of my favorite songs on the album.
Yeah.
I hate when artists hide the feature so you don't know what's coming up, and then all of a sudden with 2 minutes left in the song, you hear a little Cole verse. It was fire.
Mm, mm.
Um, so yeah, that'll be in the description down below. Khalil, what was your song of the week, bro?
I'm gonna go with something different. I'm gonna do Bryson Tiller with No Thank You. Really good cut on that album.
That's such a good. So I only downloaded two songs off the Bryson Tiller album. I think you guys liked it more than I did, but my
Yeah.
song was the other song that I downloaded. Ciao is my favorite song on that album. But yeah, so no thank you, Ciao, a little Bryson Tiller action, a little future J. Cole action. So yeah, that's our songs of the week. I wish I could play them, but I can't. But like, look in the description, all the way at the bottom, they'll be down there. Tap in with us. So without further ado,
Mm.
our top 10 wide receivers of the
Boom.
NFL draft. So the way that I figured we do it is I think the, like shock value of this class is after three. Like I feel like for the most part, there's a consensus three wide receivers. Whatever order you might have them ranked in is like up to you. But I feel like for the most part, everyone knows the top three. So I figured we would start from one and go down rather than start from 10 and go up. So yeah, I mean, let's start it off. Khalil, the film god, the
You can't
NFL
start
wide
with
receiver guru, the football man himself, who is, in your opinion, the wide receiver one of this 2024 NFL draft class?
Man, why you gotta start with me? Not a guru for sure.
Look at the notes, notepad out. Look
You're
at
funny.
him. Come
You're
on.
funny. I went with Malik Nabers for my receiver number one. Malik Nabers. Do you want me to explain
We're
why, or are we just
starting
gonna
off
go through them
hot,
first?
baby.
We're just gonna go through them first.
No, explain why. Yeah, we could go through
Explain why.
by person. Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote a few notes, pros and cons about the guy. Super dynamic receiver. He's a weapon. Versatile. Can line up in the outside, line up on the inside slot. X receiver. You can use him jet sweep. You can use him in the run game if you want to. I just think he can pretty much do everything. He's super explosive, dangerous with the ball in his hands. Yards at the catch, run at the catch, however you want to call it. He's gonna do it. He's great at the 50-50 balls, awesome tracking the ball. There's a play against Alabama, man. He's lined up in a slot. No one's over him. They're like 7 yards off of him, and he just runs straight past everyone for a post. It's on the first drive, actually. First touchdown for LSU. Just runs a post and just outruns everybody. And to me, it looks like Tyreek Hill, like Jamar Chase type of stuff too. So I think he has that level to him. I think that's a ceiling for him. There's some downsides to his game. He has to work on getting more physical, especially when you're at the top of the routes, working against press man coverage. But I think he can get to that level. He just needs some more coaching, needs some more nuance, especially when you get to the NFL. I think you get in those environments, and we're going to talk about him later on. But I think we saw the same thing in his counterpart, Brian Thomas Jr. So I feel like that's more of a system type of thing too, more of a coaching type of thing. So I think when he gets exposed to NFL coaching, I think he'll be in those situations where he can really develop on the physicality because he has a body for it, he has a play strength for it. He just has to work on some of the nuances of that game, using leverage, using his hands to really get past people, especially when they're getting hands on. Because I think you really see that when he plays against teams like more physical teams like a Florida State with really physical DBs, like a Alabama with really physical DBs, and they got some really good DBs over there too. So I think he is receiver one in his draft, Jamar Chase type of level guy, Antonio Brown shades of type of guy like that. So I like him a lot.
Plot
Beautiful.
twist. Khalil's just
There we
trying to
go.
get me to take him first in our dynasty league so he can take Marv.
I wish
Mind
I would
games,
never
mind
traded the
games.
sixth pick, but whatever.
That's hilarious now.
Yeah, I hated that I started looking at actual players now. Never happening again. I'm trying to think of where to go with it, right? So, like, obviously, I think that's a little bit of a curveball from the consensus of most of NFL Twitter or whatever it may be. But Justice, who's your wide receiver one? Is it
All right.
Nabers? Is it someone else? Who you got?
So I do have it listed as 1A and 1B.
Okay.
I don't think there's enough for me to say that one is 1 and 1 is 2. That's disrespectful to whoever you're putting it to.
No, you gotta shoot it straight.
1A to me is Marv. Now I don't necessarily agree with like some of the people who've touted him as like the Calvin Johnson type of prospect. I don't see him as like generational. I don't think he is like this astronomical. I have his ceiling for player comps. I had his high end as AJ Green with a little bit more stink to him. And on the low end, I have Drake London, and I think Drake London's really good. I hold Drake London in high regards. Marv's body control is nuts. He's twitchy in and out of breaks. He's an elite deep threat. The thing that got me is he doesn't make the most of his physical tools all the time. Like he's a physical mismatch, but he doesn't always put on film that he can use that physicality or is willing to use that physicality. But the ball tracking, the hands, I think worst case scenario, he's one of the 10 best receivers in football. So, and Malik to me is just as safe as a bet. I in a similar light to Khalil, I had his best case is Jamar Chase, and his worst case is Chris Olave. And that's just, and Khalil was like, that's a really good worst case. I was like, that's how good. Like, that's how good I think he is. I mean, like, you look at like Malik, who's a freak, dude. He's a 4.35, 42-inch vert. Statistically, he got to his max vert quicker than anybody else did, like in terms of like how quick he jumps to it and reaches that. He's got good hands. He has late hands, which we like. And I told Khalil he's got a little Debo after the catch. Good legs. I feel like he's dynamic. I feel like he's dynamic.
Really, really good legs. Yeah.
Really
good legs.
Yeah. But the thing that sticks out the most to me when you watch him is how good he is at decelerating. Like it's like he hits top speed and then it just breaks, and then he can get back to top speed as quick as anybody I've ever seen. So to me, that's why I said best case is Jamar Chase. I think that he can be better than Marv. I think that I think on ceiling alone, I would take Nabers. But I think just like looking at the full body of work, the safer pick, I think they're both super safe. I think the safer pick, like the middle ground for both of them, is probably Marv.
No, we're all pretty much on the same page, if I'm being honest. Nabers is, so I had it ranked Marv 1, Nabers 2, but I'm down, like I could flip it. Like I was going back and forth on 1 and 2. I don't think it's this massive gap at all. People that have Nabers 1, I think that's relatively like cool with me. Like I could see both of them playing out to be top 5 receivers in the league. I would say they're both pretty bust proof. I think for me, they're probably the only 2 bust proof wide receivers here. I know a lot of people like Rome. I also like Rome. I'm not as like, I think it's a tier break between these 2 and Rome.
Wait, how are you taking bust? Because I think Rome is bust proof.
I don't think he's bust proof. Okay, I think that to define bust, I'd say like I could see a realm where Rome doesn't ever end up being, I guess to put a number on it, like, but even that's tough to put a number on it because like subjective.
Let me give you something to work with here, because like for me, like Rome, I had best case Devontae, worst
Adams,
case, yeah, worst case Allen Robinson.
Allen, would you say Allen Robinson's a bust? I would say
No, I
if
think
Rome,
I think the best version of
No,
Allen Robinson's really good.
when he was
I
in
would say if
Chicago.
Yeah,
I
he
would
was
say
really
if
good.
I would say if Rome goes with a top 6 pick or a top 10 pick in the draft and ends up being Allen Robinson, that's a bust.
God, that's
Disappointing.
so harsh. Yeah,
I think
disappointing,
it's
but not a
disappointing.
bust, bro. He's a lock. Like Rome's a lock Pro Bowl receiver for me.
I think he will be too, but I wouldn't like. I'm saying out of these three, like I don't see a realm in which like Marv and Neighbors aren't
Pro Bowl.
like
You say Pro Bowl?
Hall of Fame guys,
Yeah,
Pro Bowl guys,
Yeah.
all pro guys. Hall of Fame might be a little much, but like all pro guys. And so like I'm saying like when you take into account draft capital, I think by all accounts Rome is probably going to be top 10. I don't see him falling past the Bears at 9. I could very well not see him going past 6. But like
wait,
let's say he's top 10 and if he ends up being Allen Robinson, I would be disappointed.
do you have a problem with Pro Bowls?
Mac Jones made a Pro Bowl. I just think
Yeah,
it's,
that's
I think
Tyler
the
Huntley?
measure is- I think
Tyler Huntley?
the measure nowadays is like crazy for Pro Bowl. Like it's just the scales is weird. So it's a hard
just like
measuring
if you're
tool.
good at dodgeball, like you get in.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
so it's just
Yeah.
like
No,
Um,
I don't think
perennial Pro Bowl or like all pro is fine too. I like
I
all
think
pro.
all pros a little like a step above like perennial
It,
pro.
no,
bowler.
it is.
Yeah,
It
So
really
like
is for sure.
I'm not willing to say Rome's like all pro all the time.
It's
okay.
fair.
Yeah, I think he's like
A notch below that.
yeah. I mean, he could be
Yeah.
on any given year, he can be one of the 10 best receivers in football.
Okay. I'm willing to agree with that. I think for me, just to double back on my Marv thing, I think it's tough to find a real serious weakness in his game. I think when I was looking through the film, the thing that I was the most a little bit like disappointed in was his like ability after the catch. Granted, like he didn't have a ton of opportunities to show us stuff there after the catch. But I do believe he can be successful after the catch. If you guys know like the Matt Harmon reception perception thing, I was looking at that and like he charts. I think he charts he doesn't chart their entire season, but he charts out a decent amount of games for them.
I think 8 games, 6 or 8
Yeah,
games.
yeah, it's like a decent enough sample size, and so like he broke 1+ tackle on 50% of the times that like he was able to get in space. So like he's breaking tackles. He's tough to bring down, is what I'm saying. So I think when you get to the next level, like that kind of stuff translates. So I wouldn't even say that that's going to be something that's going to be a con for him. And then in his pros, like pretty much you guys all said, like the great footwork, doesn't waste any movements, smooth route runner. I do agree with Justice in that like he doesn't necessarily use his body super well for me. And I think he can sometimes struggle with drops. But I think that's also stuff that like when a lot of the time when like these super highly touted receivers come into the league, like we judge them against guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, who have had like years to develop their craft.
Yeah,
But, like,
we nitpick.
so like in 2 years, 3 years with like real NFL development and conditioning, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. will be fine. And so he ends up being my wide receiver 1. Malik Nabers, he's probably my favorite wide receiver in the class. Like if I'm going through talk about guys I plant my flag on. He's not one of them because I just think that like he's just regarded as he's going to be nice regardless. But like a couple guys later that I love, I'll say, but like period in like terms of my favorite guys in the draft, Malik Nabers is that for me. You guys pretty much said everything. He's so tough to tackle in open space. He broke 2+ tackles on 20.5% of his open field opportunities. That's third best in the class. Like he's a tank. And like
Hey, who's first best? Who's first best in the class?
it's actually Lad McConkey, but his sample size is super low because he only played 9 games.
Yeah, I really thought it was gonna be Malachi.
He didn't chart Malachi yet, but I'm pretty sure he's up. He's gonna be up there. Malachi's on my top 10 list. I love that kid. But yeah, honestly, my cons for Malik, I pretty much said that he could sometimes rely on catching the ball too much with his body than going out and making a strong catch with his hands, which I did see a couple times. But overall, I think that's like another nitpicky thing. I think he's pretty much bust proof. I think he's a slot guy. I think you can line him up outside too. He wins pretty much all areas of the field. And yeah, I think him and Marv are a tier above pretty much every other wide receiver in the class.
I think Nabers is the most developed in terms of being a weapon at all three levels.
Mm. I also think he's the most versatile. Like you can put him pretty much anywhere. You could put him outside. You could put him left side, right side, slot. You could on the line of scrimmage, a little bit off the line of scrimmage, run screens, all of that. Like I think he's displayed the ability to do all of those things in college. Whereas like Marv, I don't want to say he's one dimensional, but like he just hasn't had the bag to be able to be shown that on film. So yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah, I think there's a level Neighbors still needs to get to on the outside when you get closer to playing some of those top level corners, physical corners, long corners. You talk about Sauce, you talk about Pat, you talk about Jalen Ramsey, some of those guys as far as
JC
the
Horn.
physicality. Yeah, as far as especially JC Horn. As far as those guys and experiencing that type of physicality, I think he has a little bit of ways to go, and he might be more scheme dependent when it comes to that sometimes. But even if so, like you talked about his ceiling, Justice. I think even if he never develops on the outside and gets to that Jamar Chase level, I feel like he'll be the best slot receiver in the freaking game, and you can
Yeah,
still put him wherever else. And even if he gets in the right system, I mean, you can do things around that and work around that too. So like the floor is extremely high, the ceiling is extremely high. Even
the
with
ceiling is the roof
yeah, it's insane. Even with
Shout
Marv,
out to MJ, baby.
I don't even think the floor is Drake London. I think it's still higher than that just because a little bit more juice to him.
for
Even
Marv.
in that case, yeah.
Really, what's the floor for you? If you had to give
Who
like
was
a
the
player,
ceiling for him again?
ceiling, I gave like AJ Green, but like with some more stink to him.
With some more
Mm.
stink to him. I don't know.
I
It
don't
has to
know.
be
Like,
some.
do you say it's like a because you look at AJ Green and how like physically dominant he was. That's not like how Marv plays. Like the frame resembles each other. They're
Yeah.
both really good athletes for their size, like their speed. I,
I
I
I
I
put a lot
think
of stock in when guys get to that level, I put a lot of stock in this. Like they step it up a notch. Like you get into an NFL locker room and you get around dudes that have been there before, you get around
yeah,
coaches who have been there before, can really help out with stuff like that. Like he has the physicality for it. Like you've seen him like really work through he gets held all the time. He's worked
yeah.
through that before. He uses his hands and he's great with the 50-50 ball. So I feel like he can really work on that part of his game and really learning how to dominate using his physicality in his body.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's a
AJ,
projection. That's a projection, though, a little bit, but still.
I think people like for people listening, if you don't remember what AJ Green was like at his peak, you should go watch it because it was disgusting.
It
And
was.
so I don't want that to like undersell how good Marvin is. Like I dropped the name Jamar Chase for his like currently on our minds for a guy like Neighbors. You're like, oh, AJ Green. AJ Green was one of the best receivers in football. So I don't want anybody to think he's just not the Calvin Johnson everybody thinks he is. I'll put it that way, in
I
my
think that's
opinion.
fair. I think, and I like for the ceiling to be like the comp to be Calvin is crazy to begin with. So I think it's fair to say that. Um, I
Yeah, what
guess
did
that
Calvin
brings
run? Like
us.
a 4.3? I mean,
Yeah,
Calvin's not running
if I was
4.3.
if I was like super reaching for a comp, it would probably be like To, which they tried
Mm,
to throw on Rome. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Calvin running a
you said that
4.3. I
to
don't
us
think Mars
earlier.
running a
Yeah.
4.35. Calvin,
No, he's not running a
Calvin's a
4.35.
freak. And yeah, T.O. I've never seen T.O. for Rome, and that was just am I remembering him incorrectly or something? I don't know what's
I
going
don't know, bro. But To was
on.
disgusting.
I don't know.
To me, To's the second best receiver of all time. So that's a super reach.
Shit,
And,
that's a
and
hot take, my boy.
What?
Uh,
come on. That
Randy and
is
then
second best.
To.
that's a definite hot take. Everyone puts
You
Jerry
don't
Rice
jack
at
Jerry
one,
Rice.
and
No,
everyone
I
puts
don't.
Randy
No, I
Moss
don't.
at two.
I don't think Jerry Rice is better than Terrell Owens at football. I think he played longer.
You got Calvin. You
Good
got
point. That's a little bit.
Antonio Brown's peak. Man, gosh, that's my favorite receiver.
I
By the
know.
way,
Oh, yeah, yeah. You
yeah.
just the CTESPN. That's
Yeah,
your
that's my
guy.
favorite account, baby. I'm trying to
Hey,
run his shit. Get the
he's pretty
fans going.
goaded on Twitter though too.
Nah,
So
he does.
he's in his
Whoever runs his account is a genius.
he's pretty prime on there too. So
Whoever runs his shit is genius. I guess that brings us to wide receiver three. We'll go back to you, Khalil. Who you got for your wide receiver three in the draft?
I have Rome at my wide receiver three. I left my other notes on Rome at home. I have Rome there. I think he is smooth. I think he does an amazing job of with those 50-50 balls as well. A great route runner. The speed is still good, even if it's not at the elite, athlete level that you might want him to be. But I think he's so consistent. He can work from all areas of the field. Great on the outside. Really great using leverage. I just like Rome. I don't think he's not like a bust type of player. You're gonna get something really good out of Rome, and And I think he is. I would. So I'll put it like this. Even if Marv is gone, Malik is gone, and Titans are at number 7, and it's between a tackle and a receiver, I would still consider taking Rome even with that top 10 pick if I'm the Titans in that spot. I like Rome a lot. I think he's consistent. I think he brings another dynamic to an offense, whether that is being a deep threat in a way. He's amazing with ball tracking. He can really make any catch there is out there. Has probably one of the best hands, if not the best hands in the draft. I feel like, so I would probably put him. I would probably take him if I was at 7 with the Titans and considering a receiver or lineman. So that's how I feel about Rome.
Yeah, you talked about him being like not like the athlete, like the two guys ahead of him were kind of freaks of nature. So like Rome, like when you like go watch their film, then you go watch Rome's, like the explosion just doesn't like pop out. But like
For
I texted
sure.
Khalil, yeah, I texted Khalil like you look at like the way he gets in and out of routes, like you'd be like, that's just like he's not like popping, but he never lost a step.
Yeah.
Like from the time like he made that cut, the where he was at on straight line speed is the same speed he was at when he made that cut. So there is no explosion to see. There's just not a step lost. He's the
And
most polished route runner in the class by far.
And he has
Like
such
by
an
far.
he has such an understanding of route running and really making guys uncomfortable. Watching them early on film, like really just like eating up a cornerback space. Getting into their blind spot, really getting open that way. Like he understands how to get to his spots, how to give the quarterback room for him to throw in, making himself available that way. So I just think Rome understands those levels for where he may fall short with some of the athleticism. So I just feel like he's a top 10. He's a top 10 lock for sure. I know some people, I say some people, but it's mostly just like Chris Sims being lower on him. But even then, had him at 4, I think. So
Your
That's your
savior.
guy. Yeah,
that's my
yeah.
dog. I'm
That's
not
your
gonna lie, that's
guy.
my dog.
Your
That's your
savior.
dog. You guys pretty much touched on a lot of the Rome stuff. I also have him at 3. You touched on the most polished route runner. I 100% agree. I think he's extremely detailed and polished. He disguises routes well within like his route tree. He layers his motions to like keep DBs guessing, which I think is like a very like you don't see a lot of first year players do stuff like that. So like that alone gives him like an edge up. 88.9% contested catch rate, which is the best by any wide receiver in this class, which is
So
pretty
good, man. He is
insane.
so
Like
good.
that's nuts. I think he has the best hands in the class. 23.4% contested target rate. Like Michael Penix Jr., he didn't care how contested he was. He didn't care if he was draped. He was throwing it. And Rome was catching it most of the time. So I do think he can like really bully DBs on the boundary to get positioning. And he has the whole late hands thing that the whole clip went viral on Twitter. I coming into the process was a little bit lower on Rome. And then I saw that clip where like he was really fiending to get the 3 cone right at the combine and like would not go home until he got like the time that he wanted, which means absolutely nothing. But I was just kind of like, oh, I kind of like that. You feel me? So then I started going into the tape a little bit higher on Rome, and it just kind of ended up going like that for me. So he ended up being my wide receiver 3. I think for the most part, everyone has a pretty consensus wide receiver 1, 2, and 3, whatever order they might be. But I think the like fun part of it starts at 4. So, Justice, if you want to tell me your wide receiver 4, that would be great.
I know this is not going to be Khalil's. In my heart, I know this not. We haven't talked about it, but I know this is not going to be Khalil's. And Oz, I don't think it'll be yours either. But I really like Troy Franklin.
Let's go. That's why I love him so much.
I really like Troy Franklin. He's super explosive. I think he's a house call waiting to happen anytime he's on the field. Great acceleration. He's super creative in space. Good ball tracking, and like he doesn't have great physicality, which you worry about at the next level. But we're getting into like the past the top tier receivers, so like the weaknesses are like a little more obvious. But even if you like on film, he still does a pretty good job of walling off DBs, especially when he's coming back and he's got his back to the end zone. I think Troy Franklin's ceiling, his best case is Chris Olave, and I think his worst case is Jameson Williams. So
I see a lot of I for a lot of people they say I've heard Jameson Williams or Devonta Smith. I don't think he's as polished a route runner as
no,
Devonta.
no.
And so I probably lean more so with the whole JMO thing. But I've also seen like Marquez Valdez Scantling, and I refuse to say that that's his comp.
Yeah, I don't
I've
even think
been
the play strength is. Yeah, it's not even
no,
as good as
no.
Devonta Smith. So like, I just
And so, like, I have been a big Troy Franklin guy for a really long time. When we talk about like guys that I would plant my flag on in this list of our top 10, Troy Franklin and one other guy for me are those guys. Like, I am massively high on Troy Franklin. And so, like, I was looking into, I had talked to you about this, Khalil, like off the pod, but I was looking into like predictive stats that, like, if wide receivers or whatever position it might be hit this threshold, they typically end up being a bust or not, or whatever it may be. And for wide receivers, yards per route run is like a really big thing. And like scouting them and how they're scouted. And Troy Franklin has the third best yards per route run in this class. He also has a 5.10 yards per route run versus single coverage, which is the highest in the class. Not only the highest in this class, but it's fourth over the last 4 years to only Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. So, like, versus single coverage, he's a dog. You feel me? Like, he's getting open most of the time. 2.93 receiving yards per pass attempt, which is 88th percentile amongst all junior seasons since 2010. Like, there's just a lot to like about Troy Franklin. Justice pretty much said all the film stuff. I think he's one of the best deep threats in the class, stretches the field well, really shifty with his release and footwork, elite acceleration. When it comes to things I don't like about him, his weight obviously is a little bit of a red flag. It makes it easier for defenders to be physical with him, get him out of position. He doesn't necessarily box out DBs as well as you would like. And I do think his route tree needs to be expanded, which is why like the Devonta Smith comp for me is not anywhere close. Devonta was way more polished coming out of Alabama for me. But yeah, I think there's obviously stuff to be worked on with Troy Franklin, but I love him as a prospect. And I think not only like do I like him on film, but the numbers and the analytics back it up as well for me. And so he ended up being my wide receiver 4. So Khalil, as Justice said, I don't think he's your wide receiver 4. So you can either talk to me if you got Troy Franklin somewhere, or you can tell me your wide receiver 4. I'm down to go either way.
Real quick, I'm not saying because I'm not asking this because it's not fast, because it's very fast, and I wasn't touching a 4.41 when I was at any point in my life. You know, never of touching a 4.41. Were y'all surprised by the 4.41? I'm pretty sure that's what you ran. The official.
I think from what you look at on film and then seeing the 4.41, it shocked me a little bit. I was probably assuming he would be 4.3.
Yeah, I was a little bit shocked by the 4.41. I think it was like the 8th or ninth highest in the class still, but just like when one of his throws is like his game breaking speed, for it to not be like in that top 5 range just surprised me. I will say he said he was dealing with the flu or whatever it may be, so maybe that was messing it up. But yeah, the 4.41 definitely surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think people talk about this sometimes, but running the 40 is a skill. Even at that point, I'm not saying it happens to all of these guys, but like, you know, there's a technique to it. There's you know, structure and routine, and you know, sometimes I feel like it can come down to, we don't know this all the time, but it can come down to, you know, just how you run and, you know, how you do it on that day. But my 4 receiver, I go back and forth with 4 and 5 all the time, probably every day. It changes to me. On this day, my 4 is going to be Brian Thomas Jr.
Okay.
He's coming next, Justice.
Okay, I figured.
Brian Thomas Jr. is my number 4. I think he's an elite deep threat, probably my favorite deep threat, or one of my favorite deep threats in this draft. I think he is smooth. I think there are some things he needs to work on when it comes to route running. You know, being able to work through physicality, not just that, but I guess also just working on his breaks. I think he kind of shows himself a little bit and can give the cornerback some tells in what he might be running or when he's going to be breaking or coming back to the ball. So I feel like he can grow in that area, but he looks like a gazelle out there. He's a freak athlete. He has some awesome. It's not on film a lot. Justice and I talked about this too. It's not on film a lot. I know that part. But when it does pop up on film, I think there has been some really nice after the catch ability from him, where you can just kind of take off in an instant. And I think there's sometimes on film where, you know, you go into it and it's like, that looks like Malik Nabers, and then you realize there's number 11, you know, with the ball or running the route, or the guy with the arm sleeve. There's some times it's not always like that. Malik is still a whole other athlete and a much better athlete, but I think Brian Thomas pops up on film like that sometimes. Takes the top off the defense, has some twitch to him. You know, can really separate. Just needs to continue to work on using the size, getting the physicality down, getting better with some of those 50-50 balls. I think this is a little bit more projection based, but when you get out of that top 3, that's just how it's going to be sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think if the guy can put it all together, I think with the route running, the physicality, he already has the speed. I think he can really be one of the top receivers and can be a top receiver, for a team. Actually, like be a number one guy. I see that for his ceiling for sure.
Um, so I've got Brian at 5. So I'm gonna go ahead and let you know. So that way I can go ahead and jump in. I mean, yeah, I say he's a freak of nature athlete, inconsistent route running. I said for his size, I think he's not great with 50-50 balls. And then I said pretty much at this point, it's just a straight line route runner. There's not a lot of variety to his tree. But I did say at the very end, he's got the tools to be the wide receiver 3 in the class. I think he could be as good or better than Rome if he's able to put it all together. I think I had his ceiling as DK and his worst case as Gabe Davis.
Okay.
By,
For me,
by the way, I think there is a big argument or conversation when it comes to Brian Thomas Jr. as far as what they're asking to do. We also texted about this just a little bit, but they're asking to run a lot of posts, a lot of stop routes, a lot of goal balls. He's used as the outside receiver majority of the time. Malik gets put in the slot, especially after that Florida State game, changing up their offense a little bit and finding ways to get Malik in some favorable positions. So I feel like
I'd find a way to get that guy the ball too.
Exactly. So like when you talk about how they might struggle from, with press coverage or, being able to like really work on the outside sometimes, like that's a coaching thing. But two, they're also asking him to space the field, to be a deep threat, to open up the field. And that's what they do a great job at. So I think he does have inconsistencies in his route running, but he also is not asked to do a whole bunch else besides that with his role in the offense, I feel like too. Like I think that it was the same conversation with AJ Brown and DK coming out. Like they weren't using that offense whatsoever. And you look at them now and who they are, like they slid in the draft. They fell in the draft. But they weren't asked to do a whole bunch in that offense. They weren't utilized in that offense. And of course, Brian Thomas Jr. is like he had a huge season. But I just think that conversation kind of comes up for him a little bit as far as, why he doesn't have some of this on his film.
Yeah, no, and I think obviously we're not talking about Jaden Daniels in the QB class, but I think it's the same kind of conversation where it's like, can he not do it, or are they just not asking him to? And for Jaden Daniels, they talk about the whole throwing over the field thing, intermediate routes thing, and for Brian Thomas Jr., it's a bit of the same. Wait, what are you talking about, Jaden Daniels?
He worries me. Go ahead.
Don't do this, Khalil. Don't do this. Don't do that to my king.
A little seed for next week.
Don't do that to my king. But yeah, for me, Brian Thomas came in at 6. I pretty much said basically what you guys said. Lightning speed, 4.33 40. 72% success rate on 9 routes, which is the best of any player in this class by a pretty large margin. His release variation is also pretty elite. Like for the amount of 9s he ran, for the defender to like still be on their toes, wondering like what is he about to run, like his ability to kind of keep them on their toes is pretty elite in my opinion. For me, the cons, and so like this is really the first year that I've really dove into like draft either film or analytics or just like ranking period. And so like I struggle between like what matters more, what I see on film or like what the numbers say. And so this is going to be a big year for me in like terms of how I rank people next year, because if I see like, oh, the analytical stuff doesn't really mean that much, it's more so what you see on film, then I'll adjust. But for me, there's a lot of stuff in Brian Thomas Jr.'s like analytical profile that isn't great. So like obviously he has a career yards per out run below 2, which
do you have him at 5, by the way?
Me? 6. I have him at 6.
6, okay.
Yeah, I couldn't move him any further down because of this, because like I just love the talent that he is. Like he's explosive whenever you watch him. Like watching LSU alone is fun because of the 3 of them, and Jaden Daniels, Nabers, and Brian Thomas.
They'd run by everybody in their own.
That's what I'm saying. Like
they'd run by everybody.
Like I would be categorized as like a Brian Thomas hater, but like I don't even necessarily hate Brian Thomas. I'm just not as high as him on him as like consensus might be. But what I was saying was he has a yards per out run under 2. I was looking at a list of rounds 1 to 2 wide receivers since 2018 with yards per out runs under 2, and it's DK Metcalf, Dante Pettis, Van Jefferson, Chase Claypool, Terrace Marshall, Tyquan Thornton, and Jonathan Mingo. So outside of DK Metcalf,
hey, jury's still out of Jonathan Mingo. All right, so
I would say that the case is closed, brother. outside of DK Metcalf and Khalil, that's why when you bring up like DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, I think that is a really good comparison. And so like that makes me double thinking a little bit, but regardless, like the numbers just don't stack up predictive wise for me. So I'm not out on Brian Thomas, but I see like a little bit of Christian Watson-y, and just like the way that he plays,
When that
not
Khalil
the
brother's
likes him
healthy
some
though, when
Christian.
when Watson's
when
healthy,
Christian Watson's
what
healthy,
he did to that Packers offense
Christian
though,
Watson is healthy. He's a good
changed the
NFL
offense
player.
completely.
Yeah, but
He's a
now
good
he's the
NFL.
wide receiver 3 in his own team. So,
Yeah, Romeo
And
Dobbs on Tavion Wicks,
can't stay up
baby.
or stay on this field, man.
But
and
yeah,
they're
I
still
think
good.
yeah,
I hate them, hate
Jordan
the
Love is
Packers.
him, baby.
Oh God.
But yeah, for me, he ended up being wide receiver 6. I just couldn't get over some of the analytical things, and like that's why I said going into next year, if I see he's just elite regardless, then like that'll obviously play less of a role in my rankings next year. But for now, I couldn't put him in higher than 6. So Khalil, who was your 5?
The
AD
boy.
Mitchell.
There
AD
we go.
Mitchell is my
The
number
boy.
5.
Is that
I said
is that our crush in this draft? Because that's my crush in this draft.
that is my second favorite receiver.
Yeah, we love
I
him.
told you that, and you're like, "Oh, you putting
I'm
him at number
out
2?"
on
No,
AD
he's my
Mitchell.
second favorite receiver. I figured you were. I said Brian Thomas is smooth earlier. AD Mitchell takes smooth to like a whole different level. Like he is. I don't know. It looks like I don't care how this sounds. It looks like CD Lamb out there 90% of the time. The route running is so nuanced. He is a great separator. He makes people look silly in man coverage. I don't like the way Texas. I don't like their offense. I didn't like their offense at all. Watching them on film, I didn't like Quinn Ewers that much after being high on him for a little bit. Watching him on film, but I think
He's
AD
not good, bro. I just
is
don't think he's
not
good.
When yours, no,
not
he's
good.
Yeah.
trash.
It was just not a fun watch for me at all. But I think he's explosive. He has top level speed, but he also has a route running to come with it. The only things you worry about when it comes to him is like motor, motivation. I don't
Effort.
know,
It's so weird, dude.
effort.
Yeah.
Maybe personality. It's a little concerning sometimes. Like I watched an interview with him, and he just like was just so like a little bit indifferent, or just like just didn't have a lot of personality, short answers. So it's like hard to so you see what he does on film as far as the motor, and then you see him in real life. So it's just like you just hope he gets there as far as like taking NFL seriously, actually being that guy. But I think he has all the tools to be a number 1 receiver for an offense. Again, super smooth. The body control and the ball tracking is
I think he's the best ball
special.
tracker in the class. I think he's
Spe
I think
yeah,
he's the
go
best ball
ahead.
tracker in the class.
It's
You
special,
touched on a
man.
lot of it, dude. Lowest drop percentage in the class. Hands are there, not a problem. It's hilarious that there's a guy this talented that we have to worry about if he's got like the want to be that good as his physical tools can be.
And
Because
yeah,
like,
sometimes he's like so talented out there, like he doesn't have to do much to get to where he needs to be, or
yeah,
get open. Like it's
yeah.
crazy.
I'm not convinced that if you like put AD Mitchell and like this is so hard for me to say. And like Rome, like in the same situation, and like he like wanted to play football, he wouldn't be as good as Rome right now. Like or like at least held in the same regard. I think his pop is just when he pops, bro, he's unreal. Like when you watch the good games, that dude, he's sickening good. I had
Guy
his
is huge.
yeah, I had his ceiling at D Hop.
Mm, okay.
I think he gives a lot of D Hop vibes. But I had his floor as Kadarius Toney because like you just don't know what you're gonna get, and I actually think Kadarius Toney's pretty talented.
Yeah, for
Just
sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, this is my crush. I love him so much. I really, truly want him to want to play football at like a high level for a long time because if he's doing that, I think he can be. Dude, it's so nuts that I truly think 4, 5, and 6 could just as easily be 3, like all 3 of them.
Yeah.
That's how good I think they are. And I think in a normal year where you don't see like Marvin, Malik, Nabers, these guys would get a little more love than they do. I think AD has been a little in the shadows for like even like the Brian Thomas Juniors. I think he gets talked about less, but I think he's special. I think he's going to be so good. He just got to want to play.
I think there's like a
Yeah.
college thing to it sometimes. Like, yeah, like he's just in college. He's going to the NFL. Like sometimes it feels like with certain guys, sometimes there's a conversation as far as
Mhm.
effort, as far as it's really a mental game. You can see other guys go through it sometimes. Marv didn't have as good of as of year either. Some of that was because of the quarterback, but it's just like it can be so difficult, depending on the offense, depending on the situation, depending on
Different
where you
sport, but
are.
Ben Simmons was just like not impressive at LSU. Like they gave no effort to playing basketball there.
Yeah,
Granted, he's like just doesn't play basketball now, but
Now,
for a
but
little
like,
bit,
well,
he was pretty good.
oh my God, but yeah, for a little bit though, he was doing everything.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's just
So,
like
anyways,
the
yeah,
back's legitimate though, right? Like the back issue.
yeah, sure, you can say that. I
like
don't
Ben
believe anything that
Simmons.
man says. Yeah, I don't. He don't want to hoop, bro. He's
No, he
not
not trying to
voted his
hoop. My
body
son,
hella
he got the
step.
money. He trying to watch the game. For me, AD Mitchell, I'm not as high as on him as you guys. He's my wide receiver five. Because there's a lot of red
Why?
flags.
Wait, AD's your wide receiver 5,
You have him pretty high.
but you're not as
He
high.
is.
He's
He
my wide
is.
receiver 6, but you're not as high on him as I am.
I'm
Yeah, I know, but Brian, I was between him and Brian Thomas for me, and I ended up going Brian Thomas just because, like, ceiling wise, I mean, I ended up going AD Mitchell because if ceiling wise, I think it's higher than 7 through 10 for me.
Mm.
But like player wise, I don't necessarily love him. Like, I think the bust potential is relatively high. But when you look at his film, like I think he's the perfect example of like film versus like analytical stats. And like him and Brian Thomas Jr. both are kind of like that. Whereas like Troy Franklin is like the analytics are nice, but the film is kind of eh. Um, but for me, you guys already touched on it. Brian Thomas, I mean AD Mitchell, I think like CeeDee Lamb for me is like a good when you watch him, you do see shades of CeeDee Lamb. I think the film is damn near immaculate. He has some like effort issues. He'll give up on plays here and there. The body language won't be great. I've seen George Pickens comparisons, which I don't think
He
is
doesn't block.
crazy.
He not
Yeah,
gonna block.
yeah, exactly. So I don't think it's too crazy, but like I also don't necessarily totally see it. But yeah, I don't love AD Mitchell, but I could see his career going like either way for me. Like I could see him being super nice. I could also see him 2 years from now, us being like, yeah, AD Mitchell was pretty horrible in the league. So I don't really know where I stack up with him.
I'll tell you right now, if he's there back end first round of fantasy drafts, I'm taking him and every one of them. So
He definitely will be.
Yeah.
Or
depends if
he might be mid. He might be a mid
depends if
first.
people are drafting quarterbacks or not. But
It also
I
depends
can't.
where he goes, right?
That's
Like
by the way, I'm so ready for fantasy football to be back because there's so much I want to talk about in this pod just with fantasy football. Anyways,
I
Can't
can't
wait.
wait. Landing spot is just also such a big thing with wide
yep.
receivers. Like, like if AD Mitchell goes to, I don't know.
Khalil, what's the AD Mitchell landing spot? I know you got one.
I was watching Connor and Trevor today. They said something about Kansas City.
That would be
That would be
They
oh,
got
insane.
they got the last pick in the first, right?
I just
That
licked
would be
my lips
insane.
twice. I was,
Yeah.
anyways.
So
Pick my list twice
I
is
licked my lips.
nuts.
I licked my lips twice.
there we go.
Oh wait,
Um,
so wait, Kansas City is a good one. Um,
I've seen a lot
Carolina
of Bills.
desperately needs something.
He'll be the wide receiver
Uh,
one.
I like Brian to the
Yeah, easily.
I like Brian to the Bills a lot.
They have to draft a receiver. They don't have a choice but to draft a receiver.
I heard they might trade up, like big trade up to get one of those guys. You know what I mean? Like I heard they could try
What do
and
they
get into like the top five.
to get Nabers?
Yeah. Like
For what?
if the Chargers want to trade out,
Are the Chargers stupid? They don't have a receiver either.
they don't. But apparently Harbaugh's like, yeah, I want to trade down. I want to trade out. So we'll see what happens.
He's an idiot. Just take Neighbors and don't think about it.
I totally agree. I think it should be the top three QBs. Apparently the Vikings want JJ so bad till he'll be four. And then Marvin Neighbors should go right after them. Neighbors on the Giants does kind of scare me a little bit, but I think the talent, it will outdo whatever Danny Dimes is gonna throw him. Like he'll be fine regardless.
Danny Dimes won't be the quarterback past this year, probably.
Exactly. So
Drew
I
Lock,
think
baby. Drew Lock,
yes,
baby.
sir. I love me some Drew Lock. I guess Khalil, that brings us to your wide receiver six. I almost got messed up with the order, but yeah, who's wide receiver six?
Yeah, I'm gonna hit this one. Crap.
Am I? Are you gonna say
Probably.
Keon Coleman?
Yeah, it's Keon Coleman.
Oh, he's not in my top 10, but
Keon Coleman.
I respect it.
Wide receiver six. There's a part of me that maybe hold on to this from the season. I didn't watch a lot of college football, but I saw some Keon Coleman highlights and stuff, and was pretty high on him. Thought he was a freaking nature athlete. Still is a freaking nature athlete. All right. What do we got here? Freaky athlete. Has amazing body control, contested catches, 50-50 balls. They're like 80-20 balls when you're going up against him. I think he's a problem in the slot. I think he is going to be, I think he can be using the slot pretty effectively, even if he doesn't have a huge ceiling on the outside, just because of the lack of speed. And really be able to get by guys. But I think he does a good job of still using his body, using his physicality, using his hands. So he has those type of nuances when it comes to route running. There's a few other things that I guess can like worry you when it comes to route running that he still needs to learn and work on. But I think when you see him with the ball in his hands, man, you see everything else when it comes to him. You can see the potential when it comes to route running. You see the potential when it comes to the speed and the playmaking. Like he has some awesome rack ability. He can run by you, he can run over you, he can jump over you, he can do pretty much all of it when it comes to that. And I think we've seen some of the best plays when it comes to or catches when it comes to college football this past year. I think he has great play strength. So even if the outside isn't where it needs to be, I think the slot is where a place where you can really thrive in. So I feel like his Michigan State year was a really good year for him. He had a very high year. I can try to go to some of the stats here, but when it came to that Florida
I
State
mean, he
offense,
was
and
consensus wide receiver too while he was in Michigan State.
yeah,
So
and he played with Reed even in that offense. He had 58 receptions, almost 800 yards, 7 touchdowns, and he was all in the green. With some of those stats as far as contested, as far as just being really consistent. So I think when you get to that offense where there's probably a redundant receiver on the other side of him, Johnny Wilson, who was used far more than Keon Coleman was using that
That
offense.
brother's a tight end.
Yeah, he's featured a lot more than Keon Coleman was in that offense for whatever reason. Um, even after that LSU game, you thought, it was going to be at the peak and then kind of just dipped off from there. So I feel like we've seen some really good Keon Coleman. I think situation is going to be huge for him. Getting in a good landing spot, but I think there's a situation for him out there. You pair him with a speedster, pairing with a guy that can really spread the field, and so where he can really dominate, especially underneath in the intermediate, and then get him into some screen abilities too, underneath
do
as
we
well.
like him with KC with Marquise being there?
Mm.
Him being able to be because Kelsey's still Kelsey, but he wasn't as good last year as he was the year before. The age definitely showed last year. They're going to need that third down guy.
Yeah, I think I do like that, and it was really weird, and we don't know what's going to happen with Rashee Rice, especially with
Yeah, because
this legal
he was
situation.
the third down guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially with this legal situation. So I feel like that's a good spot for him. Especially I feel like he's going to need a quarterback who can throw with timing, throw with anticipation, can throw in tight windows. Because the separation is still a thing. It's going to be a
Is as
thing.
advertised.
It's a thing that way. The route running can help out a little bit more. But I think he's going to have to be paired with a situation where the quarterback is really going to have to be more aggressive. So like Pat Mahomes, there's not a lot of these guys around, of course, but Pat Mahomes, even the Kirk Cousins, Josh Allen, some of those guys who are really really good throwers of the football, who can really throw into tight windows, and you aren't
Bryce
afraid to
Young.
throw some of those throw. All right, maybe to throw some of those stops, those comebacks, throw over the middle, even within that sense, who can really throw with a lot of bodies around. So
Justin Fields. Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
situational. He's situational, but I do love the potential. I do love.
You got
I
a
think the
comp for
floor.
him?
I think the floor is a little bit better. Do I have a? Oh, I haven't
I
worked on
couldn't think
comps
of
very
one,
much.
dude. I could not think of a comp for him.
I haven't
But
worked on comps very much, but the body is because the size is ridiculous. The contested catch ability. I'm gonna have to think on a comp for him. But nothing comes to mind immediately right now.
mhm.
Yeah, that's where I
Yeah.
am. Keon Coleman.
I
We're
didn't
at our
fall in love with Keon Coleman, but I mean, I already gave you guys my wide receiver six as Brian
yeah, me
Thomas.
too.
So,
Me too.
oh,
So
you
we're
did
at
too?
7. Yeah.
Oh,
It was AD.
we
We're
doing
at
good,
7.
baby. I guess I'll start it off. For me, my wide receiver seven is Mr. Lad McConkey out of Georgia. Six
Yes,
foot,
sir.
186, 22 years old. I'll start with the cons. For me, definitely some durability issues. He was banged up for multiple seasons, only played 9 games last year. I think he has a limited release package, physicality. But I do think he does have a relatively high floor compared to like some of the other wide receivers I have ranked under him. When I talk about stuff I like about him, I think he's a very smart football player, controlled movements, a big threat with the ball in his hands. He ran a 4.39 40. He's not your prototypical, like slot wide receiver. I think a lot of people see him, they think like Julian Edelman, Hunter Renfro kind of vibes. I think he belongs on the outside. He was lined up on the outside for 69.7% of his routes compared to just 38.6% in the slot. Sharp route runner, 80th percentile in success rate versus man end zone. Incredible footwork on outs, create separation. He operates the boundary really, really well, and he's also a threat in space. So yeah, I'm a big Ladd McConkey guy. I saw Matt Harmon compare him to Tyler Lockett, and obviously I'm a Seahawks fan, so I've seen a lot of Tyler Lockett, and I do like the comp. I think he has pretty good speed. I think he's a little bit better breaking tackles in the open field than Tyler Lockett was, and I think he's a little bit worse, with the ball control, body control, tracking than Tyler Lockett is. But like as a prototype player, I kind of like his comp as Tyler Lockett. So yeah, Ladd McConkey ends up being a wide receiver 7.
He's my wideout 7. I had his ceiling as Tyler Lockett.
Boom.
I had his
Oh,
floor as a lot. I had his floor as Elijah Moore.
Mm.
I think he's got, and I'll be honest with you, I actually just think Elijah Moore's good. Situations haven't been great. He hadn't been dealt the best hand all the time. I really thought that him and Deshaun could have put something together this year. But the only things I have on him are great route runner. I said that he's a legit athlete and he's got phenomenal hands. And that's really like the only notes I have to make on him.
so you said you have Ladd at 7?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, because we talked when you're at work that one time. You
Mm-hmm.
said Ricky in front of Ladd.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
but you hadn't
Ricky
gotten to Ladd yet. So
Ricky dropped 2 spots for me. So
you were that were you that impressed with Lamb? Oh, Ladd. I said Lamb. Ladd.
I don't know that I was that impressed with Ladd. I like his physical tools a lot. And I just love some Elijah Moore. And the more that I watched him, the more he reminded me of Elijah Moore. And I was just
Okay.
like, yeah, I'm gonna put him at 7. I think
I,
I think Khalil knows I love Elijah Moore. Like
yeah.
I've always been an Elijah Moore believer, so I really hope that he gets a situation to thrive in this year. But I think Ladd's got that tool set, and I actually think he can be out and in. I don't think he's like phenomenal out, but if he needs to go out there, he can play it. So
Yeah, I really like him out. He did struggle versus press. Like when he was pressed, his success rate versus press wasn't great, which doesn't necessarily bode well for him being an outside receiver. But like it is what it is. I don't think he's some prototypical wide receiver 1X kind of guy, but
mm-hmm,
like he can be a team's wide receiver 2 for sure.
mm-hmm.
Um, Boom. So we lined up on 7. Khalil, who's your wide receiver 7?
I have Ricky here at number 7, actually.
Talk to
I
me.
like Ricky a lot. I think he can play. I think he's pretty versatile on the field. I think he and Ladd are really in the same conversation. I think they are very similar as far as what you can do with them. I think I like Ricky at the catch point a lot more than
Mm-hmm.
Ladd. I think he can do a little bit more with the ball that way. I just love Ricky. I think he can be used in a lot of different offenses. So with that being said, I have Ladd at right behind Ricky, basically at 8.
Yeah.
So they're really neck and neck for me. They're both really fast. I think Ricky ran a 4.39 as well, if I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mistaken. At that
Mm-hmm.
point,
They're just the
both
same person.
I mean, yeah, they just have different styles, I guess.
Yeah.
It comes to actually how they look as people.
Yeah.
I told you like Ricky just because he had like tattoos and like looked like he or something.
Ricky's kind of
Um,
hard.
yeah, but I think they're great route runners. I love Ladd's separation. I love Ricky's separation. I can think they can be used on the outside a little bit. You talked about the press issue Ladd has, especially too. I think those smaller frames can really, you know, hurt them in a lot of ways. I think Ladd, him at the catch point, especially with the shorter arms, I think can become an issue for him too. At that point, but I just love how they can be used. I love their versatility. You can put them on the outside a little bit, put them in the slot a little bit. Great route runners. They're going to be really good in a number of offenses as far as just being able to separate, being able to be consistent. Being able to be there for their quarterbacks, especially if you put them in a slot in that area, just to kind of dominate user speed, stretch the floor a little bit, make passes or make catches down the field, intermediate. Just really being able to stretch the floor or stretch the field a little bit. Stretch the floor. I haven't watched basketball in months.
I think Brock Powers kind of kept Ladd from able to do everything he could do, by the way.
Mm. Yeah, he
Like I
was. I
think
mean, he was easily their wide receiver 1, even though he plays tight end. He was their number 1 option there.
yeah, I think Brock just like the way that he operated all over the field kind
Oh yeah,
of
they put that brother everywhere.
yeah. So I think that kind of put Ladd in a certain spot and like that's what you're going to do and we're going to work around whatever Brock is offering us. and you kind of get like the leftovers. And I think even as a leftovers guy, he put enough on film that like I think he's really good.
Me too.
So yeah.
I guess that brings us to 8, right? And Khalil, you said your 8 was Lad, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, my 8 is my second plant flag guy. This is probably my number one plant flag guy. For me, it's Javon Baker. UCF.
I knew he'd be in your top 10.
6'1", 202, 22 years old. I absolutely adore Javon Baker. If it comes down to like if everyone has a my guy in this class, my guy is Javon Baker. Smooth route runner, elite on the boundary, great body control, insane lateral agility. He elevates well, keeps his feet in bounds well. I guess I'll talk about my cons for him first. 4.54 speed isn't the greatest. He also broke out a little bit late. He was 20 and a half years old. That's also not the greatest. And the biggest thing for me is the drop rate, 10.6%, which typically translates to, like guys with that high of a drop rate typically do have problems with drops in the NFL. So that doesn't bode well for me. He can struggle and lose focus in the process of bringing down the catch, but if we're gonna just talk about Lad, if we're gonna talk about Javon Baker real quick, for me, when I look at like his profile, 21.9 yards per reception, that was first amongst all receivers in college football. He had the third highest ADOT, third highest yards after the catch per reception, the second highest EPA per play, fifth highest yards per route run versus man, third highest yards per route run versus zone. Like, overall, he just had a really good year. I think he was a little bit of a one-year wonder. He went to Alabama. He was there with Devonta Smith, and then he transferred. He went to UC. He was there for a second year as well, and then he went to UCF, and he just dominated. I just overall love me some Javon Baker. And I found this little stat on Twitter that I want to read. Over the last 3 drafts, there's been 3 wide receivers to have over 2.5 yards per route run and 35% targets outside and 10 yards down the field. Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and now Javon Baker. So I don't know. That's a good little group for me. And I just am very, very high on Javon Baker. And I think he's going to be one of the steals of the draft. I think he should be locked into day 2, whether that be round 2 or round 3. I just really think he should be a back end of the second kind of guy for me. And yeah, that's my little Javon Baker rant. That's my guy.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought it out there. I'm kind of big on Javon Baker right now. Let's see. In Puka's last season, he was 3+ yards per route run and 50% catch rate on contested catches. There are only 3 wide receivers in this class that have that stat. Yeah, Taj Washington, Malik Washington, and Javon. And Javon's the only one here who's 6 foot plus and 200 plus pounds. I like the frame. I like the athleticism. Like you said, first in yards per reception. It's just like there's just things you like about him. Third in yak. They're just like he's got the physical tools to be. Was he third in receiving yards and reception yards per team pass attempt? So like there's just things that he does. Like he completely dominated. What was he? 52 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 72 7 touchdowns. So yeah, I like him a lot. He had really great collegiate production. And I think that if there was a guy who was going to be the Puka of this class, it would be him.
That's what I like to hear, baby. Or even like a little Tank Dell kind of breakout. Like not breaking Calvin records, but like I don't think people were super duper high on Tank Dell, and then obviously came in and now he's pretty highly regarded. But like if we got that kind of ascension, I'm cool with that. So yeah, Javon Baker is a big green flag for me. Justice, who's your wide receiver 8? Is it Javon Baker?
Yeah, it's Javon Baker.
Oh, beautiful. Wow, we are locked in today, babe.
Yeah.
Really
I guess we can go to wide receiver 9. Khalil, talk to me.
I don't know if you guys will have him in his top 10. I guess we'll see. I have Roman Wilson at number 9. I think he'll be really good in his. You don't like Roman? Yeah. You have
he was right on the cusp for me.
He did make it.
Oh, he did?
No, he didn't.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I like.
No, he didn't.
So I like Roman Wilson a lot. I think he's super reliable in that Michigan offense. I think he was super good for JJ McCarthy, very consistent, especially in an offense where they're not passing the ball a whole bunch. They're really making it difficult for the quarterback, making it difficult for for the receiver. The stats So the stats aren't going to be super great, but I think what you see out of route running, I think you see some explosion. I really do like him at the catch point. I think there's some really good athleticism as well. So I do like Roman Wilson a lot, especially at that number 9 spot. Maybe the ceiling isn't super high, but I think the floor is really good. I do like the ceiling still, and I think he fits in a lot of different offenses. As he worked a lot from the slot, but he's also able to work from the outside and just really be consistent on offense, really good at blocking as well. So I think he can bring a lot to an offense as far as just being versatile. And I think we see that a lot just out of these, a lot of these prospects, just versatility, them being able to play in different spots. And I think that translates very well to the NFL, especially in that Michigan offense and, what he was asked to do.
Boom. Justice, talk to me. Who's your wide receiver 9?
Wide receiver 9 is a guy who just screams John Ross to me, but just on the slight chance that he ends up being good is Xavier Worthy. That speed is undeniable, obviously. So anytime you do that, you're a weapon, something for defenses to worry about. But I just in my full heart believe that he won't reach what his ceiling is supposed to be. I think he's going to be just not good. But and just in case, he's sitting at my 9 spot.
Yeah, my 9, I don't know. Me and Justice must have cheated off the same test because my 9 is also Xavier Worthy.
Y'all are making
I
me
really
sick.
do typically I typically try and
You're the
stay
football
away
head
from
here,
guys.
so like your list is probably like the more accurate one. I do
Yeah,
I
that's
do
what
what
I'm
I
saying.
can, but
That's
I'm
not how it
going off
goes. That's
like
not how it goes.
analytics and whatnot, baby boy. So for me, Xavier Worthy, I typically try and stay away from guys. Like once I saw him run the 4-2-1 or whatever he ran, I was like, oh, I'm out. But then I started like that. That's all I had to see because I was like, yeah, that. I'm getting John Ross vibes. When you look at like the top 10 40-yard dash guys, and none of them are good. So like I was like, that alone is enough for me to be like, yeah, I'm out. But I started watching Xavier Worthy, and I do think he's like a really fluid mover. Sudden, he like makes such sudden moves. His double move is amazing. And defenders obviously have to, respect the speed. And I think that gives him an advantage no matter what level of football it is, college football, NFL football. Like his speed is legit game breaking. So like I think that alone gives him a little bit of a higher floor. But then when you look at guys, like when you do look at guys with speed like that, that didn't do anything for them in the league. So I'm not necessarily super duper high on Xavier Worthy, but I think the speed uh gives him that like leg up on the rest of these guys that they all have red flags. Like there's stuff about everyone outside of 3 that we can nitpick about until like a guy with something that's that like you can't teach that kind of stuff. Like that's an intangible that like no other guy in this class has. So that was enough for me to bump him to 9. And yeah, that was my little Xavier Worthy take. For 10, for me, I had Ricky Pearsall, and you guys pretty much already touched on him, so I won't even break it down too crazy. But I was torn with 10. I had him, Malachi Corley.
Yeah, he lied to us. You said Corley was in there.
I did, and then I was going to do it. I had 2 people at 10, and based on the way that I was looking at the list that I had, I was like, nah, I'll rock with Ricky Pearsall. I had him, Malachi Corley, Roman Wilson were like kind of my all 10 ABC, but I ended up going with Ricky Pearsall. But I wouldn't be shocked if Malachi Corley is the wide receiver 10 in the class. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, Justice, talk to me. Who's your wide receiver 10?
Our wide receiver 10 is Keon Coleman. And in parentheses, I put could be wide receiver 5. I think there's like a world where Keon Coleman is like really good. I also think there's a world where that separation is a real issue and he just can't play. So I'd be remiss if I don't bring up Malachi just because he's from my town. And I think that there's some special stuff about Malachi, but he doesn't have anything on film that really shows you that he's an elite route runner or anything like that. I mean, he gets the ball at the line of scrimmage and he runs over people. He's actually got really good hands. He's actually tracks the ball fairly well whenever he does go deep. But Khalil touched on Keon so much, I don't feel the need to. So I feel like I might as well throw something for Malachi there because that's the dog and that's my kid's name. So I had to put it out
exactly. We had to represent. I like Malachi a lot. I think I had said this to Khalil in a previous pod, but like I think his landing spot will be more important than maybe any other wide receiver that we talked about because it really will come down to them like knowing the kind of player he is and putting him in positions to win. Like he's not a guy that's just going to go out there and beat you downfield for 50, 60, 70 yards. Like you have to put him in positions to win. And so hopefully whatever coaching staff gets him uses him correctly. Philly. And like hopefully Philly. I think
he goes Philly round 2.
I think that's a good landing spot. Because they need that third guy, right? And so like, and they need a guy who can win in areas that aren't, the outside. And so yeah, I like Malachi Corley a lot. But yeah, Khalil, bring us home. Who's your wide receiver 10?
Oh, real quick, when it comes to rankings, sometimes this is why rankings and lists are so stupid, just because there's so many caveats that come with it. You got the draft process, you have team situations that come to actually play a huge part when it comes to these. So you try to do your best with it, but man, this is such a crapshoot at the end of the day, and it's gonna be very difficult to see how this class pans out. But it's a really good class at the end of the day. You can make an argument so for so many of these guys, like you guys had what Troy Franklin at 4.
Mm-hmm.
I have him at 10.
I would say you hadn't said his name yet.
Yeah, I have him at 10. I think when it comes to, I feel like what you want him to be, I'm not sure he can amount to that. I
Mm-hmm.
do like this. I like the speed. The 4.41 is a little confusing when you
Yeah.
get down to it. You think when you guys have, and again, it's really good speed. Like 4.41 is awesome. But what you see on tape, and when you want him to be this specific thing, you don't see it in real life, and you think it'll translate pretty easily, even if the routine and the form and technique is not there. Like you think that 4.3 is going to pop up, when he's actually running in that case. And then also the play strength is really big for me in that situation. So I think the floor can be good in a certain situation, but when it comes to like play strength, be able to be that detailed route runner, I don't know if it's all there. And then also the 4.41, set off an alarm for me, even though it's still really good. So I think he can fit in some really good offenses. I think he can be a really good number 2, number 3 type of guy that can really space the field for a lot of different offenses. I just don't know if I have him as high as I have some of the others. Yeah, but it's all about what you want and
So
what you prefer.
you don't like the Olave comp?
Not really.
Yeah, this guy.
I love Olave though. Like he has a great speed himself. I think his play strength is a lot better. I like him. I like Olave a lot. I have him on my fantasy team. Like Olave is a game breaker, and he's really good for that offense and a very consistent number 1, number 2 type of guy, depending on if they get anyone else to come in there. But I don't know. So I guess I kind of like that. Maybe what did you say, Chris Olave? Like a what kind of
Chris
Chris Olave?
Olave.
Like a
Nah, just
or,
Chris Olave.
or just Chris
That's
Olave?
his
Yeah,
ceiling. That's
I
his
think
ceiling.
maybe like a lower end of a Chris Olave in a sense.
JMO.
I could see that. Higher,
Yeah.
maybe higher. JMO's making me so sad.
Yeah, me
So
too.
sad.
Yeah,
So
he's broken our
disappointing.
hearts.
That's disappointing. I mean, that's a bust. It's more than
Yeah,
disappointing.
definition of a bust is Jameson
Yeah.
Williams right now.
Yeah, but I have
Or
Troy Franklin number 10. I do like him. I think he was good in that offense. I probably would want to see him if I could see him in a different offense than Oregon. I think I might feel a little bit better about him, but
Hmm. Your thoughts on Malachi
beautiful.
Corley?
Oh
oh,
yeah,
Malachi
yeah. Talk to
Corley.
me real quick on that.
Malachi Corley. The route running that you talked about, Justice, is real. There's just not a bunch of that. Even on some of the clips you saw at the Senior Bowl, was it
It's
or
not
whatever it was?
smooth, dude.
It's
That's
it's
just not.
it's not like the physicality is there. Being able to use his body, use his strength, use his hands, it's somewhat there. Some of it maybe be a push off, whatever you want to say about it. But I think it's there. So I think that has some potential when it comes to being able to use his body. But it's just not. Yeah, it's not as smooth. There's not a lot of film of him actually, being more than what they used him for. But what he was used for was pretty close to elite, if not elite, right? Being able to be used in a short game, used as that whatever you want to call it, Debo, Laviska, Chenault type of player.
Chances he ends up a running back.
I don't think. I hope not.
No,
I
I could
don't
see
know
it.
about that.
I don't
I
think
Really?
he's
could
going
see
for
it.
that.
I could see Malachi Corley just being a third down back for.
And I like
Oh,
some of the
Cordero
aspects of it.
Patterson.
I like some of the aspects of his route running, just being able to work underneath, working zones as well too. Um, he does have good hands. You worry about the contested part of his game and just being able to work through that consistently. But again, like a lot of these guys, if they end up in a right offense in the right situation, like and you use them. So what Brett Coleman talked about it with his evaluation with Rashee Rice, like he was thinking about him in this lens. So like if he doesn't hit this mark or this lens as like this number 1 type of receiver, he just won't be like a top 10 guy or whatever you have him as far as your ranking goes. But if he lands in the situation with Kansas City where they're just using him as this specific type of guy, he is really good in this role and he should be in your top 10 ranking. So it really situation just becomes so important for these guys and the offenses they land in. And if a team can actually use them, use their strengths, maybe they don't have to develop the other parts of their game that you might want them to develop in.
Beautiful. I love the NBA Paint D book hoodie, by the way. That's
Oh,
fire.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was sitting here looking like, what is that D? But then I remember the NBA Paint thing. Yeah, so that's fire. Boom. And so that's our top 10 NFL draft 2024 wide receivers. I'm gonna clip this up and put damn near this is gonna be a lot of TikTok this way, baby. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you subscribe to Run It Up Podcast pretty much everywhere that podcasts are found. Leave the 5-star rating and review. Follow us on Twitter at Run It Up Pod. You can follow me on Twitter at Najee Adams _, Khalil on Twitter at Balil44, and Justice on Twitter at JReed _. Subscribe on YouTube, do all the good stuff. And yeah, I hope you guys have a litty day, a litty night, a litty life. And just like we do on every episode of this podcast, make sure y'all go run it up.
Run it
I
up.
forgot to mention the best part of his game, which is freaking, running after the catch.